Welcome to the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. We're going to explore ways to sharpen our diagnostic skills, find learning resources, and hear from experts in the automotive field. Hey, what's going on, automotive world? Welcome to another episode of the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. My name is Sean Tipping. I will be your host once again for this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope everyone had a great Christmas, great New Year's. Today on the show, this will be relatively brief, but just wanted to get a message out there to everybody. I'm going to be taking a little bit of a break from the podcast to start the year off. This will be my last episode for a little while, an undetermined amount of time, but what I'm framing this as is a sabbatical. And if you're not familiar with that term, it's from the academic world with biblical roots. The Sabbath, taking the seventh day to rest, and a sabbatical year was every seventh year. They would allow the fields and the earth to replenish, and that's the idea, is taking some time off to rejuvenate, rest, recenter, and in the more modern sense of the term, when it comes to academia, is for development, personal and professional development. And when I was at the college teaching, I was actually pretty fascinated by the idea. It was after you worked 7 years in a college, you could take a year off, and you got something like 3/4 of the pay that you normally would. So you're not getting full pay, but you're not getting zero. And as long as you go and you do something related to your coursework, right? What you teach in the college, and you're going out, maybe you're studying abroad, maybe you're going to work in the industry of what you teach, right? So for me, had I done it, had I been at the college, I was only at the college for 5 years, but had I done the 7 years and I put in for a sabbatical, it does have to be approved, but I would maybe go work in the industry. And I mean, I kind of already was, but that's the idea of it, is to allow you to step back from the teaching role and go out and learn in the field, which is a great idea, especially for instructors, especially for anybody who's in a changing field, right? Automotive being one of them. Things are going to change so much. So if you can take some time and get back there in the real world and get in touch with everything, it's going to be really valuable for your students and for the class. And that was the idea. And anyways, fascinated with it. But that's kind of what I'm framing this as, is I'm not leaving, I'm not ending the show. I'll be back at some point. I don't know exactly how long it's going to be. Maybe a month, maybe 6 months, maybe a year. Undetermined at this point. But I always said when I started doing the show, and I have been doing the show every week for 5 years now. I started in January of 2020, right before COVID dropped. And I've really, really enjoyed it. It has been an amazing experience, and genuinely enjoyed doing it every week. It didn't feel like work. And I always said if it did start to feel like work, I would reconsider doing it. And lately, that's kind of been the way it's felt. I've almost kind of had to push myself a little bit to come up with content, and the motivation to reach out to guests and to get those interviews set up just hasn't been there. I'm sure you noticed there hasn't been a whole lot of guests on the show as of late. But, that happens with time. Burnout's a real thing. And my goal here is to step back from things for a little bit, as far as the podcast goes, and just kind of recenter myself and rejuvenate and see where it goes. Maybe get that spark back, maybe get some new ideas, maybe take a different perspective to it. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to go, but that is my goal for the near-term future and the start of this year. In the meantime, podcasts will still be live. You can still check out all the old episodes. I'm going to keep the website going, so you'll have access to anything. And I've got almost 300 episodes, so you got plenty to listen to. Same with the YouTube channel. That'll be up. We just won't be adding any new content to it in the near term. You can always reach out to me through the normal methods. My email is in the show notes. You can message me on Facebook. Try to get back to everybody within a reasonable amount of time. Also, training events throughout the year. I'm actually working out my training schedule right now as far as what I'm going to, but you guys know all the big events throughout the year. And there is a ton of other content out there. So I don't think you'll be left high and dry. Without this particular podcast, obviously there's other podcasts out there. You got Jeff's and Fonslow's, and I mean, there's a gazillion other ones once you go outside of the automotive world. There's countless YouTube channels for you to watch. And you can check out the sponsors of the show, right, for training content. Keith at l1training.com and Automotive Seminars just dropped their 2025 training schedule, and it's got awesome stuff on there. So go check that out. You can get like an early bird package if you buy the whole year this month. And again, I'm going to be spending this time coming up with ideas and different ways to share information and ideas within the field, because I do genuinely like doing that. It just, maybe it takes a slightly different form. I don't know yet. Again, I'm going to spend the time I'd normally be doing on the podcasts to kind of grow and rethink things there. And then, eventually at some point be back with some really cool stuff. But that's all I got for you here. The last thing would be just a really, really big thank you to number one, everyone who's listened to the show over the last 5 years, and even if you haven't reached out to me, but for those who have reached out to me, I've made some outstanding contacts, friendships, professional relationships with so many people in relationship to the show. And, in that way, like it's hard to even think about not doing it just because of all of the really cool things that have come about just from doing the podcast. Wildly surpassed any expectations that I had when I started doing this back in 2020. And I hope to maintain, those relationships even in the period of time when I'm not releasing content. Again, feel free to reach out to me. But also like to thank the sponsors of the show, Isaac Rodell, Keith Perkins, Automotive Training Seminars, Tommy Oliva. Another thing that I always said about the show is I was only going to have sponsors for things and people that I actually used their services or goods, and people that I actually knew personally, that I know, I'm going to use this stuff in my business, and I know that I can recommend someone else use that thing or have that service, and it's going to be beneficial to them. And for all those I mentioned, honored that they would, sponsor this show for all the time that they did. Huge thank you to all of them. But hey, that's what I got for right now. I won't drag this out too long. Again, big thank you. And with that, until we see each other again, make sure to get out there every day, fix the world one car at a time.